Hello, and welcome to my podcast number 3. I'm Glen Cooper. I'm a business broker in Denver, Colorado. I've been helping people buy, sell, and value small businesses for nearly 50 years. I've also written the only book on the subject. In this podcast, I'm going to tell you all of my secrets just as I did in my book. This episode 3 is taken from chapter 3 in my book. My book is Glen Cooper on Business Brokerage. Let me take a moment to tell you how my book is organized. Chapter 1 is an introduction to the 5 challenges facing any business seller. The next 5 chapters then discuss each of those 5 challenges. Then there are 5 large 6-chapter sections on each challenge. That's how my 36-chapter book is structured. It's a big 2-pound book measuring 8.5 by 11 with 125,000 words. It's substantial, and I assure you it looks really good on your bookshelf. If you listen to my podcast so far, you have a lot of patience. I'm sorry to say that I'm going to subject you to 3 more podcasts to cover 3 more introductory chapters before you're going to be happy. But you will be happy because in podcast 6, we'll actually talk about business valuation. It's my feeling, though, that you must have this background information first that I've been giving you about the 5 challenges before I start to explain the numbers. My book, again, is Glen Cooper on Business Brokerage, available on Amazon. And as I said before, the Kindle version, just $5, is convertible to a PDF, so order that if you don't want the prestigious printed book version on your bookshelf. So today, as promised, I'm going to start with a shocker. Are you ready? 98% of the people who call you about your business will never buy it. In fact, 98% of buyers who call on your ads will never buy any business. Yes, 98% never buy. It's only 2% of self-identified buyers that actually end up buying a business. Can you imagine any business where 98% of the people who enter your shop never buy anything from you? But it's true. And this is really the biggest reason new business brokers fail. And you could fail too. Brokers and sellers can spend most of their time talking to buyers that never buy, and they don't recognize that until it's way too late. Now, before I tell you what you can do about it, let me tell you how I know that. I'm currently in my 47th year as a business broker, and for most of my early years, I thought it was just my fault that buyers didn't buy a business from me. But over the years, I noticed that we often had scores of responses to our ads on each business before a buyer would finally make an offer. And for businesses we had for sale that had fewer than 30 to 50 ad responses, there were often no buyers at all who stepped forward. Finally, but not until my 28th year in 2007, when I had to reorganize our files, did I discover that only 2% ever buy. In 2007, I asked my office manager, Lee Edwards, to count all the buyer files before she shredded all of the old files. And as Lee went through over 10,000 buyer files from the previous decade, as well as 25 years of old seller files, she calculated that on average, there were 50 buyer inquiries for every business we sold. By coincidence, I did a seminar at a business brokerage conference that year and mentioned this ratio as something we'd calculated. And when I announced my conclusion that 98% of buyers don't buy, I heard a voice in the back of the room said, "No, Glenn, you're wrong." My heart skipped a beat. The voice from the back of the room was a veteran business broker of many years' experience that I knew very well. I thought I was about to be embarrassed. Then he said, "It's only 1% who buy, 99% who don't buy." The whole room broke into laughter. The important thing that we all need to take from this is that we need a method of getting to that 2% who will buy and to quit wasting time with the 98% who don't. The fact that you don't know this is not a surprise. The fact that my trade association, the IBBA, doesn't teach it, that's the surprise. Nor does any business brokerage franchise like Transworld, Sunbelt, or VR ever mention it to their own broker trainees. That so many brokers don't know that fact destroys the careers of many before they even get started. Why doesn't anyone teach this? Well, it's the same reason they don't want to teach that brokers typically only sell 20% of their listings and that most business brokers fail every 3 years. Bad news is not what they want to teach. Now, I can't really blame them, I guess. I don't make a living getting people to join my profession, and they do. But since you may be about to hire one of us or about to try to sell your business yourself, you need to know that what I teach in my book is the truth. What I'm saying on this podcast is the truth, and you need to prepare for it. Either learn to expect it yourself or learn to hire an experienced broker who knows the truth about prospective buyers, that 98% of all of them will never buy a business. So what do I say in my book about what to do? What's my secret of getting to those 2% who will buy? Well, I have 4 key questions I ask prospective buyers. We at Colorado Business Brokers also have a 7-step buyer registration process that we insist buyers go through. So I want to give you those questions, teach you those 7 steps, and help you to understand what you should do about it. Here is one abbreviated way to frame these 4 questions. Now, I say abbreviated way because you're not likely to bluntly ask these exact questions, nor should you. These really just represent the 4 areas you need to explore. You or your broker needs to verify that buyer prospects you are talking with can afford the business they're inquiring about. You need to know if they have the sales and management experience typically required to buy your business. You need to verify whether or not they can make decisions quickly. Are they decisive? Because if they're not, they may never buy the business. Finally, you need to know their story so you know whether or not it's the right time in their lives for them to buy a business. Otherwise, they may not. Okay, after knowing you need to ask about these 4 areas, I understand that you need to have a lot more discussion about what answers you need to hear. But let me go on to the 7 steps first, because those steps may also help you get the answers you need. Those 7 steps are: number 1, we insist that buyers complete the non-disclosure and buyer registration forms. Number 2, we initially interview them right away only if we have questions about their completed forms. We don't talk to them otherwise. Number 3, we send them the preliminary offering summary that we have prepared on the business they're asking about after the forms have been completed. Okay. Number 4, only if they express interest by calling us back do we go to the 5th step, where we arrange a Zoom meeting with us as brokers to vet them for a potential Zoom meeting with the seller client. Our 6th step is that we then arrange a Zoom meeting with them, us, and the seller if we think the seller would benefit from such a call. Our 7th step is we then might arrange an in-person visit for that buyer with us and the seller at the business. If they're interested enough to possibly make an offer, that is when we ask them for resumes, credit reports, and financial statements to be submitted with their offer. Okay, so now you know what we're looking for. You know the 4 questions and our 7 steps. These questions and steps are discussed in Chapter 3 of my book. So if you are taking notes, get the book. But what are the techniques for getting the answers we need to hear to our 4 questions? Let's take each question separately, taking those 4 questions, this time in reverse order. I should explain here that a lesson we've learned is to ask the least important questions first and the most important questions last. Why? Because we need to build trust with our buyers before asking them anything that requires their trust of us to get a truthful answer. So here are the 4 rephrased questions in reverse order, the order I actually use most of the time, and each phrased in a slightly different way. Number 1, why is this the right time in your life to buy a business? Number 2, who else besides you is involved in this decision? Number 3, why does this type of business attract your interest? And finally, number 4, have you ever gone through the SBA loan process before? So you can see how changing the wording and order of each question changes the emotional feel of the interview. How do we know whether or not it's the right time in their lives to buy a business? How do we know if they're decisive? And why is that even important? How do we judge their education and skill levels and other qualifications to buy the business they're about to buy? How do we really know how much money they have? Those are the pieces of information we need to pre-screen them for our seller. To move forward to buy a business, it probably should be a time in a buyer's life that's not distorted by undue stress. If they've just been fired, just gotten a divorce, or even if they've had to move their families across the country, those are stressors. If something has happened or will happen to lower their self-esteem just as they buy the business, that's probably a reason they might not complete the transaction. Next, how do we know they're fast decision makers? And why is that even important? Well, here I could go into a long explanation of personality types and generational differences, which are covered actually in later chapters of my book. But there's some simple clues I offer instead. I chose today a question about who else is involved. Now, if they speak energetically about that person, that's a good sign. If, as they move through considering the business buying decision, they get caught up in minor items, that's a negative. Owning a business requires a person to be decisive. That's what I'm looking for. That's what you should look for. I find that a high energy level in their manner of speaking is one key indicator of their ability to make many decisions and the many decisions they need to make to buy the business in the first place. The third question about their education and skill levels requires a more complicated assessment. You might be able to read between the lines of the resume or just listen to their buyer story. I chose today, for example, this question about what attracts them to this type of business. How a person answers questions about their background, education, experience, and skills, and what they want from a business ownership experience tells you a lot. A mature, middle-aged person looking to buy a business is who you want to have as a buyer, not someone who's also been sending out resumes looking for a job, or someone who's just scanning for any type of business for reasons that won't even resonate with your seller. Remember, you're screening this buyer to see if they'll be appropriate for the business that you are selling. But besides education and job titles, you also need to know what skills they have, not just what positions they've held. Keeping in mind the business opportunity they're inquiring about, your business, I like to take some time and ask them what they will enjoy doing in this new business. I ask them about things that may relate to what I know they've done and what they will have to do if they buy the business we're talking about. Finally, how do I know they have the money? Well, a formal financial statement is the most useful thing, but that often isn't offered until a buyer prospect is deeply into this process. And when a buyer is just signing the NDA and just being interviewed for the first time, I like to explain the approximate situation that I know they're about to enter. Some have been through the SBA approval process before. That's why I chose that as my lead-in question today. And if they have, I need to hear how it went and why they did it and what happened as a result. To buy the business you called about, I often say it's going to require a third of the asking price down in cash and additional working capital on hand, as we showed in our offering summary. No matter who provides financing, I say any lender is likely to require that you have additional reserves in cash and you have a high net worth and an excellent credit rating. Is all of that possible for you? I ask. So you can see that how a person responds to that line of questioning tells me a lot. As you work with people, you become much better over time in figuring out who's real and who's not. But when you sell a business, your skills at knowing about people are tested. Getting the right buyer is critical to achieving the highest possible price for obvious reasons. But this is also the best argument for possibly hiring an experienced and wise business broker. If you've never done this before, you may be severely lacking the experience that you need to recognize the best buyers when you meet them. Some of these skills come with doing it often. Some of these skills just come with maturity and age. So if you're young, you're likely to be somewhat disadvantaged. And the more life experiences you have, the better you'll be. Keep in mind, too, that if you're selling your own business without a broker, you also have to set up a system for screening these buyers. Putting them through some paces before you interview them helps weed out the people who won't fill out forms. And mostly that's a great filter. Many buyers call on ads for businesses that aren't really appropriate for them. Asking them to jump through that form-filling hoop often knocks out the non-serious buyer. In these podcasts, I'm trying to cover the material in my book, but my book is so detailed that I can't really cover even a single chapter completely in a short podcast. To handle buyers so that you're finding and then spending more time with the 2% who will actually buy, you need to look for answers to those 4 questions and follow a step-by-step process that the brokers follow. Just as brokers often kill their own careers by spending way too much time with that 98% of buyers who will never buy, so you can waste a lot of time in this process in the exact same way. It's easy to understand why you need to spend lots of time with the one buyer who actually buys your business. But making the assumption that all these prospective buyers deserve that same amount of your time is just nuts. An aggressive multi-step screening process is absolutely necessary, so don't forget that, design that into it. All buyers will tell you that they're serious, but you need to politely and gracefully screen them and do it efficiently. Don't be afraid to say, "I'm sorry, it's a no," just as we brokers explain to buyers that it's just not a fit. The way to accomplish that is to ask those 4 questions, make sure you know the answers, and follow the system that experienced brokers follow as outlined in my book. In the next podcast, we'll cover what I call differentiation. Big word. It's about how to feature the way your business is unique, different, unique opportunity. Making it unique makes it special and sets it apart. Being unique and special nearly always adds value. We'll talk about that further in the next podcast. In the meantime, do buy my book on Amazon.com and follow along with me on these podcasts. It's called Glen Cooper on Business Brokerage, as I said. And if you know anyone trying to sell a business, especially in Colorado, please recommend me if you can, or at least put me on the list of brokers that you think they should contact before choosing who will be their broker of choice. My company is Colorado Business Brokers, but it's at mycoloradobusinessbrokers.com, as I've explained. All my contact information is both on that website and in my book. Hey, thanks for listening. I'll see you in my next podcast, number 4, on differentiation.